Do you have your own style? I used to think that style can be defined by just describing the shapes and colors. I even thought my own art could be defined that way. But over the course of finishing hundreds of paintings, my view on this has changed considerably. I was wrong. Frankly, how I defined my style was holding me back. After seeing this video, I hope you will reconsider the elements that make your style, and if you're in the lucky phase where you don't have a style yet, I'm sure this will help, because I think there's a lot of nonsense art advice being pushed around about how new artists need to find their style. I don't believe in any of that, at all. Quick sidebar here. This painting has been created with the cork brush that is part of my Best of Angry Mikko brush set on Gumroad. The thing about this brush is that it has tiny holes that show the previous layers of color in the painting. And I wanted to highlight that not just for this brush, but any brush that you might already own that has this feature, I recommend creating these sort of pools of color underneath or having a background color when you're painting. I thought that this is especially important to mention here, where it looks like I'm painting on white background. However, if you pay close attention, you see that I'm always creating like a pool of color for all of the shapes that I'm painting and then building on those layers. But if you directly paint on white only, you end up kind of baking in that white color into your colors, and that can have a very negative impact on the vibrancy and the richness of your colors. So that's just one tip that you can use with any brush that shows the previous layers of color underneath. And I wanted to say this in case somebody is using my brush in particular, because this is a danger when you are kind of doing a technique like this, when you are painting on white, but you still want to retain that richness in your colors. When I was young, I used to sign up for every kind of art class and workshop that I could think of. That's how I learned to do block prints and ceramics. By the way, my ceramics were terrible. I was just interested in learning it. That's why I did it. I've even finished a course on light sculptures, which I loved, by the way. I thought that was super cool to do. It's not practical in any way, but if you ever need a very energy inefficient lamp, I'm your guy. I always felt a bit guilty for being so excited to try new techniques and subject matters and exploring new ways to express myself. It seemed like everyone around me already had a clear visual style. They were developing at a much faster rate, while I was just all over the place, doing whatever experiments that I was doing at the time. I was also keenly aware that because I didn't have a single focus, I wasn't developing my own skills as quickly as others around me. The upper secondary school I had gotten into was art focused, and I can honestly say that everyone was at a really high level with their art skills from day one, so there was this sense of competition all around me. I can honestly say that all of my friends were just better at drawing than I was, truly. It was impossible not to feel like I was way behind everybody else. And as I knew that art was something that I wanted to do as my main job in the future, this caused quite a bit of internal panic. Let's talk about skill growth, because that is very deeply tied into choosing a style and developing a style. A common way to think about skill growth is that it is either horizontal or vertical. A horizontal skill set involves knowing a little bit about a wide range of techniques, while a vertical skill set involves having a high level of proficiency with a narrow focus. My skill growth for many years has been horizontal because I was drawn to new ways to create. So I was always learning something new, and I was starting from the beginning with every one of those techniques. I used to think that this multidisciplinary approach had handicapped my growth completely, but when I started doing concept art, all of those pieces came together in a way that I didn't think that was even possible. When you have a few months, sometimes only a few weeks, to invent a completely new visual style for a project, you obviously can't suddenly become a different artist overnight. Instead, you learn to use every single skill in your arsenal to get to the end result as quickly as humanly possible. And that usually involves throwing all the principles that you might have about how to create art in the first place and just, use whatever shortcut that you have at your disposal to get there. That usually involves every skill that you have learned up to that point. For example, I have very basic rudimentary 3D modeling skills. I have experience in big complicated line art pieces, and I can do color design that conveys a mood. By stacking these seemingly unrelated horizontal skills, I'm able to accomplish styles that would otherwise be out of reach for me if I had specifically trained for that style only. That's why I don't feel any week spent learning new skills has been time wasted anymore, and that's why I'm so free to start learning new things from scratch whenever I feel that some technique or approach is interesting to me. Instead of feeling guilty about lacking focus, I'm now proud of my skill set and what it enables me to do. So if you do pixel art or practice using more graphic approach to your illustrations, know that none of that time is wasted, even if that's not the future emphasis of your art. With this knowledge, we can tackle the most misunderstood concept about style. Style is not just visuals. When I can recognize your work, it instantly makes all of your art more accessible to me. You might have the kind of vibes that I'm drawn to, and by following your art, I can see more of that stuff that I like. Right? No. Because style is not just visuals. Style can be thought of as branding. And by branding, I don't mean a logo or a font or a color palette for a product. It's the whole reputation of a company. It's the whole value set of a company. Same way your style is not a selection of tools or subject matters or colors. Defining your own style with just descriptive words of what people see, that I think is overly reductive. You're simply more than that. And by you, I mean you as a person. Think about it. If you had to narrow down the subjects of your art to just one thing for the rest of your life, that would seem overly limiting, right? Because you are more than just one thing. This leads us into choosing a style that fits your message. The same way I learned that in games, style can amplify the message, in my own work, that's true too. Something I think is cute or funny simply wouldn't work with realistic or dull colors. When I have darker themes in my art, I wouldn't use bright graphic shapes because they would distract from the message. Sidebar number 2. So these lines that I'm currently creating here, they are me showing how the composition works. This is because this part of the painting happened in my channel membership live stream, and I usually don't do public live streams where I'm continuing an existing painting, so for that reason I usually do membership live streams on this channel. And during one of those live streams, one member was asking how the composition works, so this is just me drawing actual lines on how that stuff works. These days, instead of thinking or worrying about my style being consistent, I simply focus on making my art feel true. How can I express this one idea in the most powerful way possible? And yes, approaching style this way will not get as fast growth as vertical skill stacking would. But, and this is the important but, I think those connections that you create through making art this way are deeper. When people learn to identify my style, they know more about me. They know more about me than just the one thing that I like. If you make art that's always the most true expression of yourself, no matter how that looks on canvas, you're forming a deeper connection with the person who is seeing your art. Even if those individuals who are exposed to your art, even if that's a smaller group, because remember that if you're branding your own art style by just using visual identifiers, then you are developing a faster visibility online because your art is more approachable. People can recognize you faster and they can make those connections quicker. But I would argue that they are still knowing a very limited aspect about you by forming your online reputation this way, instead of focusing on what your creativity wants to say and what kind of art you yourself are drawn to. If we think about art as a visual language, shouldn't the value of your art be considered through its strength rather than its reach? This leads into the most important aspect about this discovery, When you express your thoughts in their purest form, you will enjoy art a whole lot more. You have no idea how many people DM me saying that they feel trapped in the image that they have created for themselves online, that their audience is only there for certain kind of fan art or style that they themselves are growing tired of. There are so many people who feel trapped in their art style and are in that situation. But these traps, they're not real. You can make whatever it is that you want to make. It might feel really painful to pivot away from something that has previously been successful for you. But think about the long game here. How motivated are you going to be in 5 years if you keep making what the audience expects you to make? If you're in this for the long haul, that choice should be really easy to make. Of course, take the path that brings you more joy, because other people will feel that joy eventually through your art as well. When I think about my own style, I always think about this one sentence: nature heals all wounds. That I think describes most of my art, but it doesn't have to describe all of my art. Art styles can change and grow, just like you're changing and growing as a person. I used to be ashamed of these weird experiments outside of my main body of work, but now I'm proud of them because they are helping me navigate where my art is going next and what it's going to be like in the future. Instead of trying to artificially manufacture a style, I recommend just making lots and lots of art. Let the grooves of the process guide you to what feels natural and easy to you. Yes, I said easy. And when you look back at your old work, don't think about it as a burden which you have to carry forward. Think of it as a stepping stone that will lift you up higher towards your next chapter in this adventure. Let's think of style as something that's much bigger than 1 or 5 works of our art. Your works are just small parts of a bigger whole that you are not only building, but it's an ever-evolving process. If you feel like you're stuck with your style, that's just a sign that you're not exploring and letting it grow like it wants to. Nobody else is putting that limitation on you. That's a limitation that's completely invented and something that you don't have to suffer from. You can simply choose to be brave and explore. And when you think about your style, don't think about it as this one supporting beam that is holding your style together. You are a complex person. Like any individual aspect about your style is just a drop of water, and you are the ocean. And with that attitude, I believe that makes a massive difference in how fast you can grow as an artist. And most importantly, it directly affects the kind of art that you make. And I'm sure that kind of art is something that you will be very proud of, because it always feels like the truest expression of whatever you are feeling or want to communicate at that time. And if you want to learn how I let the grooves of the process guide me into what feels easy to me, I recommend watching this video for a very practical experience of that process.